Good morning. Good morning. So much for 7 o'clock meetings.
Clerk will close the roll. All right, I see Delegate Willett here. So Delegate Willett, let's start with you in House Bill 232.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. This is House Bill 232. It's a bill that will request that the Department of Elections make available voter registration forms to colleges that are who have students who are receiving a Virginia tuition assistance grant money. This bill was actually brought to my predecessor last year as a suggestion from a constituent. Students are already getting information from the state on the VTAG in terms of that funding. So this would be adding a blank voter registration form to that information provided with them. State Council on Higher Education of Virginia, SCHEV, will work with the Department of Elections to make a list of those colleges available and help on that, help facilitate that distribution. And you may note the current legislation provides for a similar program with DGIF in terms of folks applying for hunting and fishing licenses. So the idea is to meet the voters where they are and get the forms, in this case, to the students at their colleges.
Are there any questions for the patron?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bloxham.
Just trying to work out the logistics. Could you explain again how the registrar would know where to send the absentee ballot to? I'm trying to get how that all connects together.
These are students who are already receiving tuition assistance, so this would essentially be a form added to that when they're getting updates on their loans.
Mr. Chairman. Right. So it's just a blank registration form.
Exactly, it's blank registration that they then will mail back. Exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the bill? Opposition? Oh.
Lisa Stye with Virginia Education Association, and we support this bill.
Opposition? Move on. Motions.
Move to report.
Motion and a report and a second to report House Bill 232. Members will record their vote on the electronic voting system. Clerk will close the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Delegate Willett. Delegate Krizak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Chairman Lindsay. This bill, HB 500, directs the Department of Elections to provide voter registration lists to circuit court clerks twice a year at no charge for jury selection purposes. At any other time in the same 12-month period, the list will be provided to the clerks for a reasonable price, as it is now. As you all know, the circuit court clerks use this registration list to aid in developing jury pools, and that's calling people for jury duty is an essential function of the clerk's office. It really doesn't make sense to be charging them. And there's a companion bill in the Senate. I think it's making its way to us. Several states around the country already provide those lists. I do have Chip Dix here who can speak on the bill too.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Chip Dix on behalf of the circuit court clerks, and we requested this bill. And again, we're just trying to make sure we've got accurate jury pool information at least twice a year so that we can do what we need to do in that respect. I don't think there's any opposition to the bill, and the Department of Elections has agreed to provide these lists twice a year, which is why we settled on that number.
Is there any questions? Delegate Bloxham.
Is that going to be an electronic list, or you have to, it's going to be a paper hard copy?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that Delegate Bloxham, in most cases, it's going to be electronic. It's just going to be a data dump. So it's an efficient way of doing it.
Is there anybody here in favor or opposition to the bill other than Chip? Any other committee members? We'll work on motions. There's been a motion and a second to report House Bill 500. All members will vote on the electronic voting system. Clerk will close the roll. That bill reports out 5-0. Thank you, Delegate Krizak.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee.
And we'll be at ease for just 1 second. All right, we're back at order. We are going to have Delegate Sickles do his two bills. So, Delegate Sickles, you can pick. We've got House Bill 241 and we've got House Bill 242.
Apologize. No. Is there a substitute for this bill? 242?
We'll be at ease.
I'll do this one. Yes, we'll just go. No. Okay. I think on 242, we still need some more. Yeah, just pass by if you don't mind.
Okay, we're back in order, and I'll entertain a motion to pass by House Bill 242 for the day. Is there a second? All those in favor of passing House Bill 242 by for the day, say aye. Opposed? All right, that bill is by for the day. And then Delegate Sickles, we're on House Bill 241.
241, yeah. In current law, there is, right. In current law, there are special requirements if you want to register at a P.O. box. And oftentimes, it is to protect somebody. There's a list starting on, if you see House Bill 241, starting on line 33, any active retired law enforcement officer, any party granted a protective order issued under authority of any court of competent jurisdiction, any party who has furnished a signed written statement by a party that's in fear for his personal safety from another person. Number 4, any party participating in an address confidentiality program pursuant to 2.2. And then there's 2 more. But the change that is suggested is by this bill is in reason number 3, where it is the only one of these excuses where a person, likely a woman in most of these cases, not always, of course, has to get this, when they furnish a signed written statement, also has to have evidence from a magistrate or a law enforcement officer. None of the other people in these lists have to do anything like that. So it is brought to my attention that this should be stricken from the code, so the bill just strikes the part that makes somebody who is threatened by somebody for their personal safety have to do more than the other people in these 6 extension or 6 reasons. And that's what the bill does. It is just to make it more fair and less cumbersome to the voter who wants to protect their privacy by registering at a P.O. box.
Are there any questions for Delegate Sickles? Anybody here to speak in favor or opposition to the bill? All right, this committee works on motions.
Move to report.
There's been a motion and a second to report House Bill 241. Members will cast their vote on the electronic voting system.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just explain a little bit the other bill.
Yep, one sec. Close the roll. That bill reports out 5-1. Delegate Sickles.
The other bill, what I'm trying to do there and didn't have it ready, and I apologize, is adjust emergency voting procedures where a person, something comes up in their life after the absentee ballot, a deadline has changed, and there's some small changes we need to make that, in my opinion, and that's just not ready for this meeting today, so I apologize for that.
Delegate Tran. You ready? House Bill 203.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. How are you? Feels like the week is long. Thanks so much. I think last week we had heard both my testimony and others about House Bill 203, which would give overseas military service members additional days to return their ballots. And as we had shared last week, I think that some of the challenges that our overseas service members face is both in the location where they are stationed as well as their duties that they may be having, whether it's being in a country that doesn't have as sophisticated of a postal service as the United States, and also sometimes having to do, missions or being on board parts of the naval fleet, for example, which make having access to the Postal Service very difficult and hard to plan for. I think one of the questions that came after the hearing was, how does the military support our service members in getting engaged and making sure they're aware of election times? And my understanding is that there are individuals whose responsibility it is on base to make sure that people are aware and asking for the absentee ballot and participating. But sometimes these individuals still face some of these hardships. I don't know if you want to, I'm done, have questions.
You have someone here to testify?
I do. Colonel Frank Wickersham, who is the chair of the Joint Leadership Council, is here this morning, and I think you may recall this is one of the top priorities for the JLC.
You can come testify.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for letting me speak with you today. I'm Colonel Frank Wickersham, the chair of the Joint Leadership Council of the Commonwealth, which is comprised of 25 veterans organizations representing about 550,000 veterans and counting their families, 1.2 million people, citizens of Virginia. Delegate Tran, we thank her very much for putting this bill forward. We've been after these solutions since 2013. The basis is the overseas serving military members, Guard, active duty, reserves of Virginia, have been disenfranchised on a regular basis due to the process. Federal regulation requires that the ballots be out in the field or be issued 45 days prior to the election. If you're familiar with the activities in the field for the military, it takes nearly 35 days to get the ballot to the individual member, and then they have to get it back. So we had, for example, in 2018, 6,770 ballots returned after the polls had closed, so they were never counted at all. So that's what we're seeking, is just a modification of the time frame, which would be to count the military ballots that were duly executed overseas that arrive after the polls close, but no greater than 2 days before the registrars have the State Board of Elections has to certify that. We figure that time frame, then that would allow an opportunity for the people, men and women that are serving overseas for us in harm's way, would actually be enfranchised again in Virginia. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Delegate Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Delegate Tran. I had, did you have more testimony? Oh, sure.
I'm Dr. Audrey Malagon with Verified Voting. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan election security organization, and we support the spirit of this bill. We support acceptance of properly postmarked military and overseas ballots after the close of polls on Election Day. We believe this is an effective and secure method of supporting our overseas active duty military personnel in their voting. We do encourage the legislature to work with registrars to find appropriate timelines in the language of the bill.
Delegate Price.
Yeah, so I had expressed concern when I heard the 2 weeks when we were talking last year, and the 94th district is right beside me, and so 2 weeks would have, I think, just really impacted how that whole process went. So I'm extremely sympathetic in Hampton Roads for our active military, but at this time, I have reservation about that much time and that timeline. And we do make progress in Delegate Sickles' bill, getting everyone to Friday. So there is a little bit of extension, but I'm just not ready to do something that could potentially take up to 2 weeks.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bloxham.
I guess my concern is similar to that. I'm where I'm new to the committee. I need the registrars to give me some deadlines and give me what we're talking about. We're talking about 2 days before the state election certifies this, and that gives an extra 2 weeks for the ballot to get to us. I'm trying to work out the timeline here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
and thank you, Delegate Tran. The registrars would prefer 4 business days before the deadline. 2 days before the State Board of Elections deadline is a little tight to get the ballots in, verify that they are duly qualified registered voters, and tabulate them to get the results to the State Board in a timely fashion. So we would ask, and we have asked a similar bill over on the Senate side, be 4 business days. There's also language about the postmark that is a little broad to us. We have suggested and provided to staff some corrective language for that. So if those amendments, we would have no objection to the bill.
You'd like to answer the question?
Clarabelle Wheeler to the question. Was there when it was discussed in the Senate, and I realize that the House and the Senate have different positions and ideology sometimes. The 2 days, as General Registrar Showalter just said, 2 business days, the State Board declares a certification on Monday, the third Monday of November. That's in code. If you back it out, you've got Saturday and Sunday, and then 2 business days just gives you Friday and Thursday to count the localities to do all the work they do. The preference would be to move it back 4 business days, Delegate. That would give the localities better time to get the votes in, get them counted, and have their own certification before they submit to the state. So 4 days would be a lot better. Thank you.
Delegate Tran, do you want to add anything?
You know, I know in other conversations we've had, you've had some concerns about how to get closer to the deadline that through Delegate Sickles' bill as well, which gives Friday. I think if there's a recognition that some of our overseas military members needs a couple of extra days, I think we would be open to the following Tuesday, and we would take that as an amendment or other thoughts you might have on that.
Delegate Sickles.
Could you clarify how many, if we went with 4 days before the state board certifies, how many days after that Friday at noon would that be?
Sure.
And you go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was, one of the concerns is I think, at least me, and I think more folks do not want to have several different deadlines to end an election. We just need to have 1 day, and the local board has to certify the election outcome and send that to the state board. And with this law, they would have an asterisk on it. I don't know what they would send to the state board because the election won't be over.
So I was just looking at the calendar for November of 2019 when we had our last elections. We had the elections on Tuesday the 5th. I think the bill that you all had passed would put us on Friday the 8th, right? So this current, and so I think as one of the registrars had indicated, the state board must meet to certify on the 3 Mondays later, which is November 25th. This bill puts you at the 21st, which is the Tuesday. So that is that's, do you want me to count the Saturday? Because that's a mail day? No?
They work on Saturdays.
Okay.
When there's a
So that is,
decided election. Excuse me. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Hold 1 second, Council.
Just to sort of jump in and
Yeah.
look at the calendar. If we're looking at November 2020. The election would be on Tuesday the 3rd. Delegate Sickles' bill would allow these ballots to be counted if they're received by the 6th, that Friday. The state board actually meets the 3rd Monday in November, not the 3rd Monday after the election. So that'll be November 16th. So 4 business days before that Monday will be Tuesday the 10th, 1 week after the election, or 2 business days after your bill.
So I'm going to exercise some prerogative here. We continue to talk about this bill, and we continue to not have kind of a consensus around it. And we do have Delegate Sickles' bill, which does push it forward. So I think we need to keep talking about this, and I would like to entertain a motion to kind of carry this over to 2021 so we can figure out a way to make sure that everybody is on board with this.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second to carry by House Bill 203 to the 2021 session. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed? All right, so let's keep working on this to get it where it needs to be.
thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Delegate Cole?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I had 2 bills here this morning. Is it 235, I thought? Okay, all right. I have
35 is all you're doing.
Okay. I have an amendment from DMV that I received that I want to give to the clerk, and I'm waiting for my LA to...
Council?
Okay.
Do you want to, Council, would you rather we did this?
But that amendment is just some technical things for the DMV to help them out with this bill.
Yeah, pass it by. We're going to pass this by temporarily. Delegate Cole, we'll come back to you. Delegate Bourne, do you want to? And before we do Delegate Bourne's bill, if we could have a motion to incorporate House Bill 185 into Delegate Bourne's very fine House Bill 872?
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second to incorporate House Bill 185 into House Bill 872. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that bill is incorporated. Delegate Bourne, the show is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 872 is pretty simple. It adds to those who are allowed to vote absentee ballot, those folks who are confined on Election Day, having been convicted of a misdemeanor or awaiting trial. This bill was first brought to me by the City of Richmond's Registrar, Kirk Showalter. I think it's a good bill. I think it furthers our discussion and our intent to broaden those who are able to take a part in our democracy and exercise their fundamental right to vote. And so that's the bill, quite simply, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or defer to the hard questions to my friend Kirk Showalter.
Are there any questions for Delegate Bourne?
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sickles.
So this is just for first-time voters that are incarcerated, not the person who's had repeated visits to the adult detention center?
That's my understanding. That's right, yes.
But why would you make, excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Sickles.
I mean, if we're worried about constitutional rights, why would we just limit it to the first time? I mean, because some people are, I met a guy in the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center who told me this is his 28th time there. Last year I was visiting. Not that, you know.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Kirk Showalter, General Registrar for the City of Richmond, and thank you to Delegate Bourne. The reason why is the problem is with first-time voters must vote in person, and if you're incarcerated, you can't vote in person, so you need to vote absentee. Under federal law, the interpretation is these are persons are eligible anyway to vote in federal elections by absentee. This just clarifies it for all. They haven't been convicted of a felony. They're simply convicted of misdemeanors or awaiting trial. So they are eligible to vote. But if they register to vote through the mail, then current state law says they have to show up in person. So this cures that and lets them vote absentee.
Delegate Sickles.
Just to clarify, if there's somebody incarcerated that had voted before, they already can access the ballot.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Is there anybody here to speak in favor or in opposition to the bill?
Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority, and we support the legislation.
Good morning, Anna Scholl with Progress Virginia. We also support the legislation.
Good morning, Carol Nagle with the League of Women Voters, and I support this. I've actually been in the jails to make sure that these eligible voters can vote absentee and make sure that their address is available for their return ballot.
All right, we move on motions. Unless there's... Is it? All right, there's been a motion and a second to report House Bill 872. Everybody vote on the electronic voting system. Clerk can close the roll. And that bill reports 4-2. Thank you, Delegate Bourne.
I thank the chairman and the committee members for their time this morning.
Delegate Ayala. And before we take that up, can we get a motion to incorporate House Bill 187 into House Bill 201? All right, there's been a motion and a second to incorporate House Bill 187 into House Bill 201. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, that is incorporated. Delegate Ayala, the show is yours.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a substitute that should be passed out to you in just a moment. And I can speak to the substitute, or you just want me to go through the bill first? I'll go through the bill and then I'll touch on the substitute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Hold on one second, Delegate Ayala.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought it was.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to move the substitute. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you. Sorry about that. One more cup of coffee. I would like to first note that this bill, as I shared with you, has a substitute draft. The purpose of the substitute is creating same-day election day voting in Virginia without ending all of our current absentee voting laws. This streamlines the goal we're trying to achieve. The bill enables voters who are not registered in a precinct to register to vote or update their registration during the one-stop absentee voting period and the 45 days preceding an election and on election day. Virginia currently ranks 49th out of 50 states regarding how difficult it is to vote. The voter registration process is difficult and restrictive. Same-day registration is one of the easiest ways to make voting more accessible to all Virginians. We can take down the many barriers and contribute to Virginia's well-being, the second hardest state in the nation to cast your ballot by its passage. This bill is also about equity in our access to the ballot box. We know that voter registration cuts off disproportionately silenced younger voters and people of color because these voters move more frequently. It is time for Virginia to join the 19 other states that have passed same-day voter registration and eliminate its unnecessary barriers to the ballot box. We need to make it easier for folks to vote, and that starts with getting rid of voter registration deadlines that disproportionately silence marginalized communities from the political process. This is why I hope you will support HB 201.
And Delegate Ayala, it's my understanding, right, this has a delayed enactment, if you could.
It does, 2022. And that's to align with the Electoral Board's process of their realignment, so we're not just pushing something out immediately. They're going to be looking at their budget and voting machines, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I strived for 2022.
Are there any questions for Delegate Ayala?
Mr. Chairman, I do have ACLU and New Virginia Majority to testify in support of the bill, once you're
let's
ready.
do everybody who's in favor that would like to speak to the bill, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the subcommittee, my name is Jenny Glass. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the American Civil Liberties Union of Virginia. I'm here today to ask you to support House Bill 201. This is a bill that would increase access to the ballot box by allowing voters in Virginia to register to vote and cast their ballot on the same day. Same-day voter registration allows voters with valid ID and proof of residency to register or update their registration when they vote on Election Day or during an early voting period. Paired with the passing of no-excuse absentee voting this session, someone could register and vote in the same stop during the 45 days preceding and up to Election Day. Our current voter registration process is restrictive. It leaves eligible voters out every year. And in Virginia, right now, you must register 21 days prior to an election, which puts an undue burden on working families and voters who move more frequently, who tend to be younger and less wealthy. Not only does this keep eligible voters who miss the registration deadline from participating, but it unnecessarily forces some voters who have not updated their registration by the deadline to cast provisional ballots, which may or may not be counted. Same-day registration has been around for over 40 years, and as Delegate Ayala said, it has been implemented in 19 other states, and it has increased voter turnout in every one of those states. While we don't know exactly how many voters our 21-day cutoff leaves out every election, we do know that among the 19 states that have implemented it, turnout has increased on average between 7 and 10% after the new policy. So by those numbers, in our last election, we have effectively blocked about 230,000 voters from voting. And there's no evidence to suggest that it increases turnout in any kind of partisan way. The current code which already allows for some same-day voter registration for certain persons, active military, and their families, has been in place for a long time. There's no reason we shouldn't extend this provision to cover all eligible voters. The single mother who missed the deadline, or the college student who didn't realize there was an election until 2 weeks ago. All we're doing is taking a procedure that the Commonwealth now affords to certain persons and applying it to all voters who present themselves in person. The ACLU of Virginia supports HB 201 and asks for your support as well. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. For the last 10 years, I have been volunteering and working at election protection call centers on election day. And one of the top issues that we get called about are folks that are showing up to vote and believe that they have updated their voter registration and are in the right polling location, but they aren't. So we get a lot of questions about that, and this legislation would actually provide an opportunity for folks whose records did not get updated or who did not, for whatever reasons, be able to update that on election day and be able to cast a ballot. So we support the legislation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anna Scholl with Progress Virginia. I would echo the comments of my colleagues and say that in all of the years that we have been working to engage people in the democratic process, there are few things that are more heartbreaking than talking to somebody after the voter registration deadline who is so excited to cast their ballot and participate in our democracy and then finds out that they're not able to. So we urge you to support this legislation.
Good morning, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. As an election official, after the election in November, thought about what would have helped voters most in the precinct where I worked, and it would have been same-day registration. We had voters that were new to the area. We had voters who moved. One voter didn't want to deal with traffic to go back to where he was registered, and he cast a provisional ballot despite trying to convince him that really his best opportunity to have his vote counted would be to go where he was currently registered. And same-day registration would have helped a number of these voters have the ability to cast their ballot and have it counted. Thank you.
Is anybody here in opposition to the bill?
Kirk Showalter with the Virginia Voter Registrars Association. We really have no position on the bill. I just wanted to say that we're appreciative, though, of the delayed enactment clause so we can focus on the no excuse absentee voting administrative details this year and then look how to best administratively handle the same-day registration in the future. So thank you.
Clara Wheeler, Albemarle County, having worked in elections for 25, 30 years, I can tell you that voter registration is one of the easiest things that we do. You fill out a form at the DMV, online, mail in from the privacy of your home, or in the registrar's office. It's a one-page, fill-in-the-blank registration form. It's not complicated. Registration provides the registrars with information to put the person who is registering to vote in the proper location, meaning where their residence is, they go to the right precinct, they go to the right voting district, whether it's House of Delegates or Congress or Board of Supervisors. You must be registered in the right place. Someone walks in to a voting precinct and registers, they have no way of knowing whether they're in the correct place or not. And the registrar's office will not be able to have time on a busy election day to put them in the right place, to inform them where they need to go to vote. This is a bill that will create much chaos in our voting system, and I think it will be very confusing for the voters. Because if they show up in precinct way over here, because that maybe is where they work, but they live way over here, there's no way of knowing at the voting precinct if they're in the right place or not. Same-day voting registration will create chaos, and I think it's a disadvantage to the voters. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bloxham.
I guess my question is to either the registrars. I'm trying to figure out, so with this bill, I could walk into any precinct and register same day. Are the precinct books tied together between precincts or to a central database? So when I walk into precinct A, I can't walk into precinct B the same day and register in two different places? Would you ever know that?
Mr. Chairman, no, sir, not with the current administrative process, which is why we're appreciative of the delayed enactment clause to determine how these issues could be worked out.
Yep, Delegate Bloxham.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So until the registrars update into a new computer system, really, is the only way that if you tie all the precincts together, would you ever be able to understand the voter when he comes in if he's not registered somewhere else? I'm just trying to get the logistics of what we're trying to do here. I mean, I don't disagree with the concept. I'm just trying to figure out how, in my area, if my books are not tied together, how would the people at the polls ever know from one precinct to the next?
And that's what we hope to be able to work out over the next year.
Delegate Price.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to draw the attention to line 13 and 14 within the substitute. It does say that the person would have to vote at the precincts for where they live. So it's just like we do now. So if I showed up at the wrong precinct, it's not creating chaos if you tell me I'm at the wrong precinct. That's what you do now.
Mr. Chair, the election officers at the polls have absolutely no idea, be able to determine who should register in that precinct or not. So there would have to be some sort of communication with central office if the person is not currently registered. If they're already registered, they can be directed to the correct precinct, but this is getting at people who are not currently registered or who may have moved, I believe.
I'm going to make a comment and then I would entertain motions because we are running up against time. But I would say we've done this in 19 states and the sky hasn't fallen. So the apocalypse doesn't seem to be near. It just seems like democracy is actually working better based on the turnout numbers and based on the comments about people, yeah, it might be easy to vote, but hey, some people still don't know the process and then they come to vote and they can't. And that's kind of disheartening and creates cynicism. And so I think anything we can do to make it easier to vote it is better for democracy. And with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to report, Mr. Chairman.
Report and refer.
Substitute.
Move to report and refer.
I move to report and refer the substitute.
There's been a motion to report and refer the substitute for House Bill 201. Members will record their votes.
Referring it to Mr.
Report and refer to appropriations with substitute. That's right.
Clerk will close the roll. That reports and refers on a 4-2 vote. Thank you, Delegate Ayala. Delegate Cole, let's do this again.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Good morning.
So we do have an amendment in the form of a substitute. And again, stated as earlier, it's just some technical amendments from the DMV. And I believe council has it.
Council?
Don't think the line numbers are going to add up. It looks like we'll be striking the language that you'll see on lines, beginning on line 57. Such information shall include the following, and then there's the list of information. So that's stricken, and instead it's will say that the Department of Motor Vehicles shall request any information as may be required by the State Board to ensure that the person meets all voter registration eligibility requirements. Everything else looks the same.
Okay. All right. Can you get a motion to move that substitute?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Delegate Price.
Is that making it more broad because the required information may change from what is listed?
DMV?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. That's correct, Delegate Price. We asked for the flexibility to work with the Department of Elections if those change in the future or if a particular customer only has certain elements to leave that flexibility for us to work with them. Thank you.
There's been a motion to move the substitute. In a second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, Delegate Cole.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So HB 235 is a relatively simple bill from my perspective. All we're doing moving now is to allow automatic voter registration at the age of 17. We know that you can't vote until you're 18 years old, but in some instances, people who are 17 years old are allowed to vote in the primary as long as they'll be 18 by general election day. So this bill just simply allows for those upon turning the age of 17, they're registered automatically in the system. And DMV already kind of has that mechanism in place. It's the way we do it now is an opt-out system. Excuse me, an opt-in system, and this bill would make it an opt-out system. And the reason we did that is because I have cousins who are Jehovah's Witness. They don't vote because of religious reasons or different things like that. So they would have the option just to opt out. And it's relatively simple. Just make sure that we get our youngest people in there, make sure they're able to vote. They don't want to find out the Monday before, oh man, I could vote in tomorrow's primary, but I'm not registered. Oh yeah, you already are. We changed that last July. So we just want to make sure that we're doing automatic voter registration starting at the age of 17.
Price.
So with this as well, so if I were to be opted in and I move and my address changes, does that automatically update my address? Is it linked with the registration?
You still have to follow the normal suit as changing your information and changing your address. This just makes sure that everyone in the Commonwealth of Virginia, upon them turning 17, we get them registered to vote.
Delegate Cole.
Well, I'm concerned about the age on this. 17, 17-year-olds are not allowed to vote until they turn 18. And I'm just concerned how, if a 17-year-old is registered to vote and they come to vote, how are they going to be prevented from voting?
Delegate Cole.
The same thing. When they review driver's license or information like that, when they come in, we can see when they're going to turn 18. Those who are working the polls know, oh, they'll be 18 by November the 7th or November the 5th. They'll be permitted to vote. If their birthday is after November, whatever that voting date is in that particular year, they won't be permitted to vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from the registrars how they plan to implement this. If I may.
Yeah. Sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Kirk Showalter, General Registrar for the City of Richmond. Under current law, somebody who is currently 17-year-old may register and vote if they will be 18 by the next November general election. I don't anticipate that this would change that.
Excuse me, Mr.
Delegate Cole.
My understanding, his bill says if you're 17, you can register to vote, whether you turn 18 before the next general election or not.
Forgive me, I have not read that detail of the bill. If that's correct, I would recommend it be conformed to current existing law.
So this is, like I said, this is just automatic.
Oh, Delegate Cole, hold on one second. Council, did you have?
Oh, I was just going to say that it does say that they'll transfer the information if they're 17 or older, and then there is language on lines for 80 through 82 that says the Department of Elections will hold for transmittal the information of a person who's under the age of 18 who doesn't qualify for advanced registration, and then so the department won't send that to a general registrar.
Delegate Block, some question for
follow-up
council.
question for
Yep.
council then. So the way the bill's written, the registrar would have to have two lists, one that's under age and then one that's registered to vote? Is that
So the Department of Elections is going to hold for transmittal the information that they receive from the DMV for a person who's under the age of 18 and doesn't qualify for that advanced registration.
effectively, Mr. Chairman, they'd have two lists, then a voter registrars list and then ones that will be able to vote
Yes.
when they transmit the right age?
Correct. For the Department of Elections, we'll have those two.
Okay, all right.
Let's get people who are in favor to come up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority, we fully support this opt-out automatic voter registration process. It streamlines the process between the DMV and the Department of Elections. I do think, and Delegate Bloxham, for your concern, I do think that there are a couple of additional changes that we would recommend. And, we can either take care of that this morning or in full committee. So currently, the bill as written does require the Department of Elections to hang on to registrations of folks who aren't aren't of age yet. A couple of concerns that I have on that. Under the NVRA, you can't really hold on to completed applications. You actually have to transmit them. And so all these applications should be transmitted to the general registrar, and they should adjudicate them as appropriate under Virginia code. So if you are not eligible, you're under the age of 18 or 17 on the year of the election, those should be denied. So I would actually recommend striking those lines or whatever posture council thinks is appropriate. And the other sort of recommended change I would like to make as a friendly amendment is I can't remember what lines they are. For folks that are currently registered to vote and their registration records are being updated because of a change of address, I think as written, it would require the Department of Elections to process that, and currently that's all still in the hands of the general registrar. And so I would recommend sort of just making sure that the language actually fits in with the existing process to not create another process for the Department of Elections that the registrars take care of. So, but otherwise, we fully support opt-out automatic voter registration. Thank you.
That's not what she. Come on up.
Lisa Stye with Virginia Education Association, and we support the bill.
Opposition? All right, so I'm going to ask that we move this, and Delegate Cole, you work on it immediately on fixing this for Friday, because I think we do support the policy. It is a good policy, and so with that, we take.
Mr. Chair, would you like for me to weigh in on that, or
Do you want to weigh in, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, it's either going to be ready for prime time or it's not, and that's my greatest concern. So if you can get it done by Friday.
So
we'll get it done today.
But Mr. Chairman, if he's not ready on Friday, I'll kill it. All right.
Well, we'll get it done today.
So with that, entertain motions.
Move to report upon all of that being worked out for the full.
There's been a motion and a second to report House Bill 235. There's been a Second. There's been a motion to report the substitute for House Bill 235 as properly seconded. Members will cast their votes. Close the roll. Clerk will close the roll. That reports 4-2. Thank you, Delegate Cole. You've got some homework.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Delegate Lopez. Delegate Lopez has two bills. Why don't we?
219
Let's do 219 first.
All right, so 219 is sort of a bookend with the bill that Delegate Cole just had. It basically addresses the back end part of automatic voter registration. This bill would create an automatic voter registration process for eligible Virginia citizens through the DMV. Unless they decline, eligible unregistered adults will be automatically registered to vote if they provide a passport or other document indicating U.S. citizenship during a driver's license transaction. These people will receive a printed notice at the DMV explaining that their information will be listed or will be used for voter registration and they will be registered to vote if eligible. The recipient can decline registration by returning the form either to the DMV or by mail. Anyone who provides a document indicating non-citizenship during a license transaction, such as a green card, will not be given the opportunity to affirm citizenship or register to vote. HB 219 also automatically updates existing registration records, ensuring that the rolls stay accurate and current. Because of these electronic transmissions, automatic voter registration would not only encourage more participation in our elections, but would also make voter rolls more accurate and easier to maintain by switching from a paper to an electronic record-keeping process. I think this strengthens the security of our voting system, reduces operating costs to the state, saving taxpayers money over time. Now, similar policies have already been enacted in 16 states, including Alaska, Nevada, West Virginia, and since Oregon became the first state to implement automatic voter registration in 2016, registration rates have quadrupled at state DMV offices. The idea, I think, is simple. We want more people to vote. We want more people to have access to the polls. We want more people to be able to vote, because we all know that excitement about voting increases in the weeks coming up to election time. And we also know that registering for vote takes sometimes weeks often weeks before the election, creating a problem that disproportionately affects younger Americans and people in low-income communities who fail to register in time. This back-end approach fixes that. Here's the deal. After talking with some incredible experts who are here, and also folks with the DMV and folks at the State Board of Elections, this does need, because it is the back-end approach, we do need to address some of the technical aspects of the process. It doesn't cost that much money. It's only $143,000 to address additional time and work by contractors to help update the elect system and the DMV system. But the fact is that I think this should be carried over for a year to allow for the proper study to happen so that we can do it right. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would hope that the people get off their cell phones, look at me, and move to offer to carry this over for a year so we can actually get it done properly.
Yeah, so we all right, and so there's been a motion and a second, and we will ask the chairman to send a letter to the Secretary of Administration to convene this working group, and the chairman has said he'll do so. And so there's been a motion and a second to carry over House Bill 219 to the 2021 session. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? All right, House Bill 219 is carried over. Delegate Lopez,
All right.
with 215.
HB 2015 is voter pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds. We all know that pre-registration allows Americans who are not old enough to vote to complete a registration form and be automatically added to the voter rolls when they reach voting age. Similar to most other states, Virginia currently allows residents to register before they turn 18 if their 18th birthday is on or before the next election. Pre-registration allows young people to complete a registration form even if they won't be able to vote early enough for the next election. Currently, this kind of process has been enacted starting at 16-year-olds in Colorado, D.C., Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Utah, and at 17-year-olds in California, Maine, and Oregon. In 2013, North Carolina repealed its pre-registration law as part of a voter suppression package that contained its strict voter ID requirement for voting and the elimination of same-day registration. Its elimination is currently being litigated in federal court. But the fact is that this is working in several states, and it's actually encouraging folks to be able to vote early. If you have a 16 or 17-year-old who is civically minded, civically engaged, there's an excitement of voting to vote. And we want to encourage folks to become lifelong voters, to make it a habit, to make it part of their what they do as a citizen of Virginia. So I think it'll bringing young people into the voting system even before they reach voting age has important benefits. Pre-registration makes it easier to vote. Pre-registration increases democratic participation. And I think that at the end of the day, that's exactly what we should be doing. Similarly, this is also something, as with the VERUS system, needs to be updated and has to have some of the technical stuff worked out. But I think if given the time between now and next year, we can actually make this something we can really be proud of. So I'd hope that the chair would move on Rule 22 that we carry this over for the year.
Yeah, and just this will be part of that same letter to the Secretary of Administration. So I would request a move to carry over. Second. All right, so there's been a motion. It's properly seconded to continue House Bill 215 to the 2021 session. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That carries over. Thank you, Delegate Lopez. And Mr. Chairman, House Bill 26, last but not least. There's been a motion to carry that over as well to 2021. I got a motion. Can I get a second? All right. The motion to carry over has been probably seconded for House Bill 26 to continue over to the 21 session. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right. That ends our docket. So can we get a motion to adjourn? There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning? Say aye. Opposed? Adjourned.
Run, Mr. Chair.